Peter Dombrovskis is one of my heroes. He has been one of my heroes for many years, going back to when I was a wiry school lad. I loved his wilderness diaries and his wilderness calendars. And the other week I was in Tasmania and I happened to pick up a whole pile of his calendars, and I thought I'd give you a bit of a show through of those as an introduction, in the same way that I was introduced to his work. And then later we will head over to an interview I did a few years ago with Chris Bell in his mother's house where Peter grew up. And I thought it was fitting to have a discussion with Chris Bell about Peter. The two of them were mates, and I wanted to ask questions from someone who actually knew him to try and find out a little bit more of how he worked. So as an introduction, I just wanted to show you some photos through one of these calendars. This particular calendar is 1990. There's a bit of an introduction there, and does that fit in the frame up there? It starts with one of his famous photos, well, his famous genres, which is a photo that leads your eye up through the photo off into the distance. Now, isn't that gorgeous? These calendars and the diaries were the Tasmanian Wilderness Calendar, or the Wilderness Diary, and they all featured photographs of Tasmania, mostly. There's a few exceptions here and there. We have to remember that these photographs are 30 years ago in the history of landscape photography. I was really heartened when I went to England to find that my landscape friends over there, Joe Cornish, David Ward, Tim Parkin, all had a similar obsession with Peter Dombrovskis as one of the heroes of landscape photography. Look at this gorgeous photo here. Anyway. Here are some pandani. They look like the ones at Cradle Mountain. This particular photo influenced me in many ways. I love the strong shapes, the geometric forms in this lower half of the photo that is totally abstract, and then he gently leads it into some reality at the top of the photo. You should have seen the joy when I found these in this antique shop at Devonport on the way home. A few more. Oh, that all falls down. And there's December. So, over to our interview with Chris Bell. Hello, I'm Len Metcalf from Len School. I'm here with Chris Bell. We've been doing some interviews and had some lovely discussions this morning. And it turns out we're actually sitting in the house that Peter Dombrovskis grew up in. And you referred to him this morning as a mate. And when he disappeared, Liz says, Peter used to say to me, if anything happened, go down and see Chris. And I really feel that I'd love to discuss with you about his work and maybe his influence on you, the way that he worked, and try and talk photography stuff for photographers, not for people interested just in his work, but people that are actually out taking photos and trying to get a bit of a glimpse into his work. So, how long did you know him for?
I met him in 73, 74, something like that, and until he died, yes. Yeah.
And so you were mates?
Yes, yeah.
So what does that mean?
Well, we had a passionate love of nature for a start, and particularly Tasmania. I've since broadened my wings a little bit, and that I relate a lot more to the mainland than I ever did. But Tasmania is still a wonderful place, largely because so much of it's untouched still. And when you go to the mainland, I'm constantly aware of, despite the fact that they're beautiful places, there's so many introduced exotic things floating around, goats, pigs, and you name it. And you've always got to take that into consideration that, gee, it's a great place, but it's a pity these things are here, where Tasmania doesn't have that problem. So I'm relating to a lot more to the mainland now. But certainly both of us were passionate about Tasmania and nature in general, so we're always talking on the phone and going around looking at pictures on light boxes and all that sort of stuff, yeah.
Oh, so it was a photographic mateship as well?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, sure, yeah.
And did you go off and take photos together?
On a couple of trips. We went down to Macquarie Island together. But no, most of my trips tend to be solo. Yeah.
I gather he was the same, that he liked to work on his own.
Yeah, sure, yeah, he did, yeah.
And that's so he could pick his own pace.
Yeah, absolutely.
And respond in his own manner.
Yeah. Even when we were down on Macquarie Island, we basically did our own thing. We
just get together at dinner time.
Yeah, that's right.
And chew the fat again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what was he like as a person?
Oh, he's a very humble fellow, and which is something I really like. He never big noted himself or anything like that. He was a very quiet sort of an individual. Yeah, I've had a lot of time for him. His death really affected me. Yeah.
I'm sure it did. And a great loss, and on many levels. I think so.
Sure. Yeah.
How did he work? What was his sort of methodology? Was it similar to yours that we talked about earlier?
I guess I think so. He sort of, rather than going from like through a crater like Lake St Clair as a walk, we tend to pick bits and work it to death rather than do the whole thing. Because, even though we've done that a number of times, but so it's generally a matter of going in, setting up base camp somewhere, and operating from there. And that might take 2 days to get in there, get set up, and then you spend 10 days there and then come out. So that we work kind of similar in that respect. As to his methodology, I'm not really sure. I never really discussed that. But I guess we just did our own thing and appreciated each other's work, I think. Yeah.
Because in one of his longer books, one of the thicker ones, there's a piece in the front of that, and I can't even remember who actually wrote it at the moment, but he suggests that it would take him a couple of days to get away from the world, to get somewhere, and to actually start taking photos, and that they came slowly.
Yeah, I guess that's what we were talking about before. It
wasn't a fast-paced, planned-out approach. It was very much a wandering, discovering.
Yeah, sure.
I sort of, through reading those things, I get the sense that he very much believed that when the light would be right, there'd be something beautiful there to photograph.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
If he was placed in a good spot, then there'd be plenty of work to continue on with.
Sure.
Yeah. So was he very prolific with the camera when he was out?
Yes, he was, and that's one thing I can say about him is that not only did he take some great work, but he was consistent. His stuff was consistently high quality, and he did bring back a lot of material. Yeah, sure. I mean, living in Tasmania, there's a few times I ring him up and say, "Oh, how'd you go on my last trip?" I didn't take a single photo because it was raining for. I've been on a few trips myself. 14 days straight rain, and you can't move and that sort of stuff. So that does limit you. But he was fairly prolific. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. So he'd take lots of shots in a day when it was things were working for him.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I assume then that means that there's a huge body of his work that we haven't seen.
Yeah, probably. Yes, there is. Yeah. Again, some also Rand's there too, because his filing system was like mine, just atrocious. So there was just cabinet full of just all these trannies, and but yeah, he did do take a lot of stuff, and I think it's all been documented. And belongs in the National Library now. Yeah.
And he was very passionate with his diaries and producing the books and those sort of things.
Yeah.
Were there many prints coming out of his studio, out of his workplace at that time?
Not that many. In fact, I think Peter only had one show, didn't he? Yeah, one show of his work.
One exhibition.
Yeah. And they were on Cedrochromes, and I think he'd revel in this new technology now.
And did he print that, or he had someone else?
Had somebody else print it. Yeah.
Print that. So for him, when the Cedrochrome, the transparency came back from being processed, that was the finished photo, really. There was no further work.
No.
That was his clear goal, really.
Yeah, that's right. And other people then just outputted it from where it was. Yeah.
And because the quality of the reproductions in some of the books are absolutely stunning.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And it sets a standard for publishing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Particularly his Wild Rivers book, which I think is his finest piece in some respects. And I get that out every now and again and just flip through it. And I think, it's still a masterpiece. Since 1982, and it wasn't admissible evidence at the High Court. Came out just before that, and they wouldn't allow it to be, because they weren't interested in the beauty of the place. They were just interested in whether the federal government had rights to override the state government on through the World Heritage Act, essentially, and that's why we won it. It wasn't because it was a beautiful river, which is a shocking thing to say, isn't it?
It's a terrible thing to be saying, but it's true.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
In every conservation battle, it's not about the beauty of the place.
That's right.
We have to find an endangered frog.
Or something like that.
To fight for it, which is it's a shame.
It is, yeah. Because beauty alone ought to be a good enough reason for saving any place.
Yes.
Forget about whether there's bloody mines under there. Mines date, every single one of them. They'll run out and all the rest of it, but beauty doesn't. And if you look after a place, it'll still be a treasure.
It's interesting, though, we don't have that same issue for an old house that goes onto the National Register or something like that. We then can see that there's the historical value there, but that natural beauty doesn't have that same
that's right.
thing.
Yeah.
His photo, Peter Dombrovskis' photo of Island Bend, has been attributed by some writers as being the linchpin in Hawkey getting in that particular election, and then obviously saving the river over that. I was too young to really quite grasp all that, to be honest. Although I do remember it.
Yeah, right.
I'm really interested to hear your side of that story and whether, how important was that photograph?
He had other this. It was just that was something, I guess, that because it was a fairly structural thing, it's fairly easy for people to remember it too, I suppose. Where there's other photos.
It fits well on a double page spread, is what you mean. The structural, and unusually it was a horizontal for Peter. Like he did a lot of vertical work.
But mainly because of his calendar.
Really?
That's how he worked. And that's why I think his diaries probably were better than his calendars, because he could use any sort of format, and he used a lot of his horizontals there.
I'm going to go back and have another look now and see.
But the diaries
I've got more of the diaries than I have of the calendars.
Yeah, no, they are gorgeous. But so what was I talking about? Just lost my
back to Island Bend.
Oh, the Island Bend shot, yeah. And I think he's got other images which are stronger, but they're sort of pictures that people mightn't be able to remember what they were like. But I think Rock Island Bend is just, because it's a structural blob in the middle of this river, I guess it was something that probably stayed with you, maybe. But certainly, it was about naming badging the river, if you like. It was people without any mental image of a river You're not going to endear anybody to anything. It's just a river somewhere. What the hell? But all of a sudden there's this picture, and people can think, oh, that's what it's like. Yeah, gee, it is pretty nice, isn't it? No, that's bloody oath. No one should be flooding that. And so, yes, it did play a big role. Yeah, absolutely. It's possibly fair to say that Fraser's government was ready to go anyway. But certainly Anthony, Deputy Prime Minister at the time, acknowledged they lost the election because of the Franklin. And Hawke seized on that. There's no doubt about it. Yeah,
yeah, it was very much an important thing.
And for the next few years, we got quite a lot of wins out of the Labor Party, Labor government. Daintree, big additions to the World Heritage area down here through Graham Richards and people like that. It's not that way now. I don't think we're going to get much out of the Labor Party now. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, well, it's interesting with the Tarkine. They've very carefully peeled off just tiny little sections to make national park.
Yeah.
The rest is just put into a vague,
vague
conservation area
right,
that can be then
mined.
Dived into to be mined, logged or whatever. And like some people would say it's been conserved, but it hasn't at all. It's just been carefully left. Yeah. And we'll just pick a little bit to say, and you know, they're smart enough or dumb enough not to list it as a World Heritage area.
Of course,
so that we can keep going back in there and still abuse it and take what's there. But it's every photographer's dream to have a photo that takes something so powerful. And as a conservationist, you know, I'm sure that you're in a similar line that we'd love to have our work eventually have that much meaning to a country.
Yeah, I guess.
And to a campaign.
Whether we'll see that again, it's anybody's guess. I mean, if you look back at history, you know, the phenomenon, say, of the Beatles, it's not going to happen again. It was just a moment in time where people went sort of crazy over a particular thing, and the winning of the Franklin River was probably one of those too. I hope not. I hope we can galvanise the whole nation again through similar things like the Tarkine or wherever. But look at the Barrier Reef at the moment. We've got half the reef is dead, and the World Heritage Bureau didn't have the guts to turn around and condemn the Australian government for it. If half of it's dead, it's a World Heritage in danger, but they didn't have the guts to put the World Heritage in danger listing on it, and they should have. And it should be enraging most Australians now that there's all these bloody coal deposits they want to ship out and all the rest of it. And yet it's just not having... Whether there's something changing in the mindset of young people, I don't know. But it seems as though something has changed, and the Franklin's saving may have been a unique moment in history, which we may not replicate again. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I dearly hope I'm wrong. Yeah. But certainly I still think photos play a big role in educating people to... And maybe we need to do that with the Tarkine again. You know, would you vote for a government that would destroy this? Which is what the logo was, with the Rock Island bed shot, and just insert the rainforests of the Tarkine, because it is a special place. It's the biggest area of contiguous temperate rainforest in Australia, and one of the biggest areas of unlogged forest and
So there's true patches of wilderness in there.
Yes, there is. Although that's probably a lot of it has had a past, you know, on the fringes and stuff like that, and there's certainly the Savage River pipeline and Savage River itself sitting in the middle of it, which for anybody, if they want to get in a light aeroplane and fly over it, is truly shocking. It is a disaster.
Well, even just driving down the road, past it, it's heartbreaking.
It is.
You just look into the tailings and the colour of the water.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's sick.
Yeah, it is. It is sick.
It glows of a strange colour.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Maybe a beautiful thing to photograph, but it makes you feel ill.
It does. Yeah.
You know, you put your hand in there and it's going to melt. The landscape, devoid of trees.
Yeah,
you know,
it's horrible.
The plants are dying. It's a tear-jerking
Yeah,
moment just driving past the Savage River mine.
Yeah, and people should be aware of what those sort of things, because the new mines that are proposed are even going to be way, way bigger. You're talking about really big stuff, and mining companies control this country. There's no doubt about it. And, woe betide any government that wants to take them on.
I'm actually surprised that the mining companies haven't been more in tune, like the logging companies, where you leave a nature strip to hide what you're doing, so that the tourists and the visitors miss what's actually going on. Back to talking about Peter Dombrovskis again. How often did he go out taking photos? Was it something that he drove him?
Yeah, he was out there all the time, and to come up with 13 strong images for a calendar every year is a big ask. You've got to be out there all the time getting it, and his diaries as well. So he was out there a lot. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
And that was his business. Like he lived off the calendars and the diaries. Yeah. So they were that successful.
And postcards and things, but mainly the calendars and diaries. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic that he could actually do that. Yeah. And it's interesting that notion that 13 photos a year is a good crop, and Sir Ansell, as they say, he talks about 12 a year is a good crop.
That's right. Yeah.
And I know when I'm out with my clients teaching photography, they want to come home with hundreds of fantastic photos, and I'm sitting there going, well, if I get a handful from a week, I'm really excited, and if I get one that makes me stop in my tracks, I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I get one every trip that I go out on, when I hit the good light and I'm really chasing the light, I get really, really excited. And it's lovely to hear that other photographers also have that in their mind and are that critical of their own work.
You have to be. You have to be critical of your own work. You have to be your best critic, because you just have to look at it all the time and pull it apart, and only then I think you're going to do better stuff. Yeah.
And so you talked about the photograph that we were just looking of his over there, and you thought that was his best work.
I think it is. Yeah.
Why do you think that one is his best work?
It's not just because it's suggestive, but it's just this range of tones, particularly when you see the tranny. There's just this sort of gunmetal grey and this snow all over it. It's just a remarkable image, I think. Yeah.
And what about from his perspective? Was which of his images were his favourite works? Did you talk about that? Ah, yes. Yeah. This is a stunning photo.
Which he probably would have thought as well. And
And interesting in looking at this is the thick mist. Yeah. And this is one of my absolute favourite moments to be out photographing, and I die for mist.
Me too.
And when I was asking you
we need a mist machine.
That's exactly right. When I was asking you about living in Fern Gully, I was thinking I could live there because it gets mist. And down in Hobart, I'm looking up at Mount Wellington, and even yesterday it was shrouded in mist. It's I could actually be out taking photos right now.
Sure. Yeah.
No, it's the same passion I have in the Blue Mountains. Is that when it really sets in. Yeah. I'm so excited to get out there, and this absolute beauty of depth that you can get. Yeah.
And you isolate things too. It's a great isolator. It gets rid of extraneous stuff that you don't want.
Gets rid of all the shit in the back. It makes simple backgrounds.
Yeah, it's
lovely and easy. Yeah. And that depth. Yeah. The mist has a really, really beautiful depth.
I'm forever saying, gee, I'm really happy with this spot here. The way all I need is mist, and of course a lot of the places you can't get mist because you rarely get it in forest. High altitude stuff and where there's breaks and things you sometimes do, but I've never seen it in a tarpine, and I'm not even sure you ever would. And I think that's really got something to do with the canopy of a myrtle forest, and I'm not sure of the mechanics of it, but it's a fairly rare thing. But when you do get it, it's wonderful anywhere else. Yeah.
I'm really pleased to hear that Peter had a business that supported himself from producing his diaries that allowed him to keep producing that work. Yeah. Yeah. And really that's the bottom line for us, is we've got to find a way of surviving so we can just keep going out and doing it, because we love it so much and we can't stop.
That's right, no, it is tough. And he had a good little thing going there for a while, his calendars and diaries. It was great to see,
I must have been 16. I didn't miss one for years and years. And I'd be on my mother pulling on the skirt going, can we buy another one in the next years? Very much so.
It was interesting, actually. I tell the story. I think I might have told at the launch of one of my books, and about how our perception of a place, about how beauty it is, it comes from photos, and when I first went to Cape Barren Island, Bass Strait, and we came back and I showed some people, I can't remember who it was, some pictures, and one of them said to me later, "Gee, I can see that Cape Barren Island's a beautiful place, Chris." And it didn't worry me at the time, but it pissed Jen off. And about a week later I read something in an American photography magazine saying the same thing. It pisses him off because he was saying it's got nothing to do with the place. It's about how it's recorded. And so when Peter rang me up once and said, I'm going to Kosciuszko National Park. I'd never been to Kosciuszko then. And all the pictures I'd ever seen of it were just rubbish. And I thought to myself, what's he want to go there for? There's bloody nothing there. Anyway, I came back about a month later and said, I'm back. Oh, how'd you go? Yeah, come and have a look at the shots in the lightbox. And I was just absolutely taken by how exquisite the place was. And then I realised, well, actually, it's not about how beautiful the place is. I mean, it is a beautiful place, but it was about how it was photographed. He picked the eyes out of it and showed us how bloody terrific the place was, and also how great the photos were in and of themselves, you know. So,
but he would have. There's a few things going on there. I think that it's much more complicated than that. That he obviously got good light, or was out in the good light. But what we're actually seeing was his relationship with it as well.
Sure.
Like, he obviously went there and went, "This is a beautiful place."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And for him, it was a beautiful place, and then that came across in his photographs as well. That here it is.
Yeah, that's right.
And they mightn't have been the big grandeurs ones that everyone else is taking. They're, beautiful, intimate landscapes of lovely shaped rocks and that lovely alpine environment. Really shone through. I'd love to see those works. Really excited to see some of that sort of work.
And we've subsequently been to Kosciuszko a few times. In fact, we're going to the mainland in October, and we're going to spend about a month in Kosci. And I've got a couple of nice things from there, and I want to go back and explore it a bit more. It's a lovely place,
it's on my agenda. Do you have any little stories you'd like to tell about Peter to finish up with?
Peter applied through the Antarctic Division to go down to Macquarie Island, and they knocked him back for health reasons, because that's where they discovered he had a heart murmur. And he said, "Oh, bugger it, let's just go around to the fishing boats around Hobart and just see if somebody will take us down there." So we went and talked to a few fishermen. They took us down for 100,000 and all this sort of stuff. So in desperation, he put an ad in the newspaper. And it just happened to be that a Kiwi sailor happened to be in Hobart and just happened to pick up the paper and rang him up and said, "Oh, yeah, I'd be prepared to run you down." And he was going to charge us 3,000 each, that's what it was, and which we could all afford. So we had to get another fella who was going to be a deckhand. He didn't have any GPS, but this guy we knew was a pretty skillful sailor. He'd been around the North Atlantic and all the rest of it. So we hopped on a boat and a 36-foot ketch and what's that, 12 metres, and then sailed down to Macquarie Island, and it was one of the most fantastic things we've ever done. Fantastic place, incredible experience being on that boat at night, looking at whales go past, at luminescence and all this, just everything. It was just auroras, it was just a fantastic thing. But so it was good that they knocked him back, because by doing so, I got to go down too. So,
I've seen some of the photos from there with the swarms of penguins.
Yeah.
And interestingly, also one of his photos there stands out for having the boiling pots in it.
Oh, yes.
For boiling down the seals, I suppose.
Yeah.
To make the oil.
Yeah.
And that's very unusual in his work.
It is, that's
to
right.
see any human element.
It